The Wyoming wind cut through Clara May's thin dress like 1,000 knives, each gust carrying whispers of the cruelty she'd endured her entire 22 years. She stood shivering at the trading post, a burlap sack covering her head, her uncle's final humiliation. Through the rough weave, she could see shadowy figures moving past, hear their muttered conversations, feel their curious stares burning into her like brands. No one would ever want a woman like her, her uncle had announced to the handful of men gathered in the dim room that morning. His voice carried the weight of disgust, as if she was spoiled meat he was desperate to be rid of. But she can cook, clean and work. $5 to whoever takes her off my hands. Before you continue with Clara May's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Please let me know in the comments. The silence that followed her uncle's words had been deafening. Clara May's fingers trembled as they clutched the rough fabric at her throat. She'd learned long ago not to cry. Tears only made Uncle Silas angrier, made his fists heavier. She'd been called ugly since childhood, hidden away like something shameful, told repeatedly that her face would frighten children and turn men's stomachs. "I'll take her." The voice was deep, rough as gravel, but somehow gentle underneath. Clara May's breath caught. Through the sack, she saw a large shadow step forward, a man built like the mountains themselves, broad-shouldered and tall. "You ain't even seen her face, Cole," someone laughed nervously. "Silas keeps her covered for a reason." "Don't need to see it," the man named Cole replied. His voice held a finality that silenced the room. $5, you said?" The clink of coins hitting wood echoed like a judge's gavel, sealing her fate. "She's yours, then," Uncle Silas said quickly, as if afraid the stranger might change his mind. "Good riddance." Strong, calloused fingers wrapped gently around Clara May's elbow. "Can you walk?" The question was asked low, meant only for her. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Then let's go home." The journey to Ethan Cole's cabin took 3 hours on horseback. Clara May sat in front of him, his arms bracketing her as he controlled the reins. She'd expected cruelty, rough handling, perhaps violence once they were alone. Instead, she felt only the steady warmth of his chest against her back, the careful way he guided the horse over rough terrain so she wouldn't be jostled too badly. "Name's Ethan," he said after an hour of silence. "Got a boy waiting at home, Jacob. He's 5. Lost his mama 2 winters back to fever." Clara May remained quiet, uncertain if response was expected or permitted. "You got a name?" His breath was warm against the top of the sack. "Clara May," she whispered. "That's a good name. Pretty name." He paused. "You can speak freely with me, Clara May. I ain't gonna hurt you for having thoughts or words." Something in her chest cracked, just a hairline fracture in the wall she'd built around her heart. Snow began falling as they climbed higher into the mountains. The world turned white and silent, except for the crunch of hooves and the whistle of wind through pines. Clara May had never been this far from town, never seen landscape so wild and beautiful. Even through the burlap, she could sense the majesty of it. "Almost there," Ethan said. "Cabin's just over this rise." The cabin appeared through the snow like something from a dream. Solid logs chinked tight against the wind, smoke rising from a stone chimney, a small barn nearby where a cow lowed softly. It was humble but well kept, speaking of a man who took pride in what he built. Ethan dismounted first, then lifted Clara May down with surprising gentleness for someone so large. His hands spanned her waist completely. Through the sack, she saw lamplight bloom in the window. "Papa!" A small voice called from the doorway. A little boy with dark hair and his father's strong features stood there, excitement bright in his eyes. "You're home." "I am, son. And I brought someone with me. Ethan's hand remained steady on Clara May's back, guiding her toward the warmth. This is Miss Clara May. She's going to be staying with us. Inside, the cabin was simple but clean. A fire crackled in the hearth. Hand-carved furniture spoke of long winter nights spent creating beauty from wood. Children's drawings hung on one wall, horses and mountains rendered in charcoal. Jacob stared at Clara May with wide eyes. "Why does she have a sack on her head, Papa?" "Because some people don't know how to treat others right," Ethan said quietly. He knelt to his son's level. "Go wash up for supper, Jacob. Give us a minute." The boy scampered off to a small room beyond the main living area. Clara May stood frozen in the center of the cabin, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was the moment when he would see what everyone else had seen, when his kindness would curdle into disgust or pity. Clara May. Ethan's voice was gentle. "I'm going to remove that sack now, if that's all right with you." She wanted to refuse, to keep this moment of not knowing intact forever. But she managed a small nod. His fingers worked carefully at the knot beneath her chin, patient when it didn't immediately give way. "Whoever tied this sure wanted it to stay put," he muttered. Finally, the knot loosened. Slowly, carefully, he lifted the burlap away. Clara May kept her eyes fixed on the floorboards, her mousy brown hair falling in tangled waves around her face. She waited for the sharp intake of breath, the step backward, the muttered curse. Instead, she heard nothing. The silence stretched so long that fear crawled up her spine like ice water. Maybe it was worse than anyone had said. Maybe Clara May. His voice was rougher than before, thick with something she couldn't identify. "Look at me." She couldn't, wouldn't. If she looked up and saw revulsion in his eyes, something inside her would finally, irreparably break. A gentle finger beneath her chin tilted her face up. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Please," Ethan said softly, "let me see you." Trembling, Clara May opened her eyes. Ethan Cole stood before her, his weathered face painted with firelight and shadow. His eyes, dark brown like rich earth, moved across her features with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was no disgust there, no pity. Instead, something that looked almost like wonder. "No one would ever want a woman like her," he repeated slowly, his jaw tightening with anger not directed at her. "That's what they said, isn't it?" She nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. "They're blind fools." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Every damn one of them." Clara May stared at him, unable to comprehend. "I don't understand." "You're beautiful," Ethan said simply, as if stating an obvious fact like the sky being blue or water being wet. Hell, you're the most beautiful thing I've seen since the day Jacob was born." The words hit her like a physical blow. No one, not one person in her entire life, had ever called her beautiful. She'd been called plain at best, ugly at worst, invisible most often. "You don't have to say that," she whispered. "I know what I am. I've known my whole life." "Then you've been lied to your whole life." Ethan's hands moved to cup her face, his touch reverent, as if she were something precious he feared breaking. "I see a woman worth saving, worth knowing, worth—" He trailed off, seeming to catch himself. "Papa?" Jacob appeared in the doorway, curiosity overcoming his father's instruction to wait. His eyes widened when he saw Clara May's face. "She's pretty, Papa, like the princess in the story." Out of the mouths of children came truth too pure to doubt. Ethan's expression softened as he looked at his son, then back at Clara May. "She is, isn't she?" Clara May's legs felt suddenly weak. The day's trials, the humiliation, the cold, the fear, and now this unexpected kindness overwhelmed her defenses. She swayed slightly. Immediately. Ethan's arm came around her waist, supporting her. "When's the last time you ate?" "Yesterday morning, I think." His jaw clenched. "Jacob, get the bread and butter, and pour some of that stew from the pot." He guided Clara May to a chair near the fire, his touch gentle but firm. "Sit. You're dead on your feet." She wanted to protest, to offer to serve them, to earn her keep immediately. But her body betrayed her, sinking gratefully into the chair. Jacob brought food with eager efficiency, clearly excited to have a woman in their home again. The stew was simple, venison, potatoes, and carrots, but it tasted like heaven. Clara May forced herself to eat slowly, aware of their eyes on her. "You can have more," Ethan said, noticing her restraint. "We've got plenty. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." He said it with such conviction that she almost believed him. "You're family now." The word family lodged in her throat like a stone, painful and precious at once. That night, Ethan gave Clara May his bed, insisting he'd sleep by the fire, as he'd done countless times before. The bed was narrow but comfortable, the quilts thick and warm. She lay in the darkness, listening to the wind howl outside and the soft breathing of the father and son sleeping in the main room. She'd expected to be kept awake by fear or uncertainty. Instead, for the first time in years, Clara May slept deeply. Morning came with pale light filtering through oiled paper windows. Clara May woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet voices. She rose, finger-combing her tangled hair, and emerged to find Ethan teaching Jacob how to mix batter for flapjacks. "Gotta get the lumps out, see?" Ethan was saying. "Nice and smooth." "Morning," Clara May said softly. Both males turned, matching smiles on their faces. "Morning," Ethan replied. "Hope you slept well." "I did, thank you." She moved toward them, hands clasped nervously. "Let me do that." "You've done enough." "Not how this works," Ethan said. "You're recovering. Besides, Jacob needs to learn." But she couldn't just stand idle. It felt wrong, unnatural. "Please, let me help with something." Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward the coffee pot. "You could pour us some coffee if you want." It was such a small thing, but he'd given her a choice, asked rather than commanded. Clara May poured 3 cups, including a much-diluted one for Jacob, and sat with them at the rough-hewn table. "So," Ethan said after they'd eaten, "we need to talk about practical matters." Here it comes, Clara May thought. The conditions, the expectations. "You'll need clothes," he continued. "Proper ones for this climate. There's a trunk in the back room that has some of my wife's things. Sarah was about your size. You're welcome to them." Clara May's throat tightened. "I couldn't." "She'd want them used," Ethan said gently. "No sense in them sitting empty when someone needs them. What do you expect from me?" She forced the question out, needing to know the terms of this arrangement. Ethan set down his coffee, meeting her eyes directly. "I expect you to heal, to learn that you're safe here. Beyond that," he shrugged, "if you want to help around the cabin, I won't stop you. But you're not a servant, Clara May. You're not property. You're a person who deserves respect and kindness." The words were so foreign to her experience that she struggled to accept them. "I'll die before I hurt you," Ethan added quietly. "That's a promise." Over the following days, a tentative routine developed. Clara May did help, cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, but Ethan made sure she rested often, made sure she ate well, made sure she understood that her worth wasn't tied to her labor. He was gentle with her, careful not to move too quickly or stand too close. When he taught her to ride his gentlest horse, his hands on her waist to steady her were professional, respectful. When she accidentally cut her hand preparing vegetables, he cleaned and bandaged the wound with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Jacob became her shadow, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. He showed her his favorite hiding spots, introduced her to the barn cat and her kittens, asked 1,000 questions about where she came from and if she'd stay forever. "I don't know, sweetheart," she answered honestly one afternoon while they gathered eggs. "That's up to your papa." "Papa likes you," Jacob said with a child's certainty. "I can tell. He smiles more now." Did he? Clara May had been too afraid to look too closely, to read too much into every kindness. That evening, as she helped Jacob prepare for bed, the boy looked up at her with solemn eyes. "Will you tell me a story? Papa tells good ones, but he only knows stories about bears and mountains." "I don't know many stories," Clara May admitted. "Then make one up about a princess." She tucked the quilts around him, thinking. Once upon a time, there was a princess who everyone said was cursed. They locked her in a tower, not to protect her from dragons, but to hide her away from the world. Jacob's eyes widened. "That's sad." "It was," Clara May agreed, "until one day a brave knight came to the tower. But instead of just rescuing her and taking her away, he taught her to be brave herself. He taught her to fight dragons, to climb down from towers, to believe she was worth saving." "Did they get married?" Jacob asked, yawning. "I don't know yet. The story's still being written." From the doorway, Ethan's quiet voice came. "Sounds like a good story to me." Clara May's heart jumped. How long had he been standing there? She rose, smoothing her skirt nervously. "He's ready for sleep. Thank you." Ethan moved past her to kiss his son's forehead. "Sweet dreams, Jacob." In the main room, Clara May busied herself banking the fire for the night, hyper-aware of Ethan's presence behind her. "Clara May!" She turned. He stood near the window, moonlight painting half his face silver. "I want you to know," he said carefully, "that you can stay here as long as you want. No conditions. No expectations beyond common decency. If you want to leave come spring, I'll take you wherever you want to go. If you want to stay." He paused. "I'd like that. We both would." "Why?" The question burst from her. "Why are you being so kind to me? What do you want from me?" "Want from you?" Ethan crossed the room slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "I want you to be happy. I want you to feel safe. I want you to understand that you're not what they told you that you were." "You don't know me," she whispered. "Then let me know you," he said. "No pressure, no rush, just let me know you." The walls around her heart, already cracked, fractured a little more. Winter deepened its grip on the mountains. Snow piled high against the cabin walls, creating a world of pristine white that glittered under endless stars. Inside, warmth and companionship grew alongside the fire that never went out. Ethan taught Clara May to shoot, standing behind her to correct her stance, his breath warm against her ear as he instructed, "Breathe out slowly. Squeeze. Don't pull." When the rifle's kick knocked her backward into his chest, his arms came around her instinctively, steadying. For a moment they stood frozen, his heart beating against her back, her hands covering his where they rested on her waist. "Sorry," he murmured, stepping back quickly. "Didn't mean to—" "It's all right," she said, and meant it. His touch didn't frighten her. It made her feel safe, protected, maybe even cherished. He taught her to track animals in snow, to read weather in the clouds, to understand the language of the wilderness. She soaked up knowledge like parched earth drinking rain, amazed that anyone thought her capable of learning such things. "You're smart," Ethan said one afternoon as they checked snares. "Quick to learn. Don't know why anyone ever made you think otherwise." "And, Uncle Silas said smart women were dangerous women," she replied without thinking. Ethan's expression darkened. "Your uncle was a fool and a bastard. Smart women are magnificent women." The compliment warmed her more than the thick coat she wore. One evening, a blizzard roared down from the peaks with terrifying speed. Ethan had been checking the animals when it hit. and Clara May watched through the window with increasing anxiety as visibility dropped to nothing. "Papa will be okay," Jacob said, but worry creased his small face. Minutes crawled past like hours. Clara May paced, jumping at every sound, imagining Ethan lost in the white void, freezing, dying, while she stood useless and afraid. When the door finally crashed open, she nearly cried with relief. Ethan stumbled in, ice clinging to his beard and eyebrows, his face red with cold. "Thank God," Clara May breathed, rushing to him. Her hands moved without thought, helping him shed his frozen coat, pulling him toward the fire. "You're freezing. Jacob, get those extra blankets." "I'm all right," Ethan said, but his teeth chattered. "Just took longer than expected." "You're not all right. Sit down." She pushed him into the chair, wrapping blankets around him, chafing his hands between hers to restore circulation. "Jacob, pour hot coffee." For the next hour, she fussed over him, bringing him warm drinks, checking his fingers and toes for frostbite, refusing to let him move until color returned fully to his face. "You're bossy when you're worried," Ethan observed, a smile playing at his lips. "Someone has to be. You men think you're invincible." She realized what she'd said, how comfortable she'd become, and froze. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Don't." His hand caught hers, stopping her retreat. "Don't apologize for caring. Don't apologize for speaking your mind." His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending warmth spiraling up her arm. "I like seeing this side of you." Their eyes met and held. Something electric passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Jacob, observant as ever, grinned. "Papa's blushing." "Am not," Ethan protested, but his ears had gone red. Clara May laughed, actually laughed, and the sound surprised all three of them. "You should do that more," Ethan said softly. "Laugh. You have a beautiful laugh." Spring began its slow arrival in early March, bringing muddy trails and the promise of renewed life. With the weather improving, Clara May knew a decision loomed. Stay or go. Choose uncertainty or choose. What? What was she choosing if she stayed? Ethan hadn't pressed, hadn't pushed, but she caught him watching her sometimes, with an expression she'd never seen directed at her before. Longing mixed with hope, tenderness mixed with desire. One afternoon, while Jacob played outside and they worked together preserving the last of the winter stores, Ethan finally spoke. "Clara May, I need to tell you something." Her hands stilled in their work. "What is it?" "When I brought you here, I told myself I was helping someone in need, doing the right thing, nothing more." He set down the jar he'd been handling. "But somewhere along the way, it became more. You became more." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm not good with words," he continued, moving closer. "I'm a simple man, but what I feel for you isn't simple. It's—" He shook his head. "I look at you and see everything I want. Not just a mother for Jacob, though you've been wonderful with him. I see a partner, a companion, someone who makes me want to be better than I am." "Ethan," she whispered, afraid to hope. "I know I'm asking a lot. I know you've got no reason to trust men after how you've been treated, but I'm asking anyway." He took her hands in his. "Stay. Not as a guest or a helper. Stay as my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how precious you are, how beautiful, how strong." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That I'll wake up, and this will all have been a dream. That you'll realize everyone else was right about me, that I'm not enough." "Clara May Hutchins," Ethan said firmly, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "You are more than enough. You're everything." "How can you be sure?" "Because I see you, really see you. Not what others said you were, but who you actually are." He leaned his forehead against hers. You're brave. You survived hell and came out still able to be kind. You're smart. You learned in months what takes others years. You're beautiful, inside and out, no matter what lies you were told, and you're strong enough to let yourself be loved, even when you're terrified. I do love you, she confessed. I tried not to. I thought it was safer not to. But I do. Then let me love you back, he murmured. Together. We'll face everything together. She kissed him then, tentative and sweet, a promise of hope against his lips. But spring brought more than melting snow and new beginnings. It brought danger. 2 weeks after Clara May agreed to marry Ethan, a stranger appeared at their cabin. He was thin, mean-looking, with cold eyes that made Clara May's blood freeze. Well, well, the man drawled. Little Clara May, all grown up and pretty as a picture. Uncle Silas said I'd find you here. Who are you? Ethan demanded, stepping between Clara May and the stranger. Name's Jed Hutchins, Clara May's cousin. He spat tobacco juice into the snow. See, my dear uncle sold what wasn't his to sell. Clara May was promised to me years back. Contracts legal and binding. That's not true, Clara May gasped. He never... Your pa signed papers before he died, Jed interrupted. Clear as day. You're my property, girl. Been tracking you all winter, waiting for the thaw. Ethan's body went rigid. She's not property. She's a free woman who made her own choice. Law don't see it that way. Jed's hand moved to the gun at his hip. You can hand her over peaceful, or I can take her by force. Either way, she's coming with me. Over my dead body, Ethan said quietly, and the absolute conviction in his voice made Jed hesitate. Papa. Jacob's frightened voice came from inside. What's happening? Jacob, get back inside, Ethan ordered. Clara May, get behind me. But Clara May didn't move behind him. Instead, she stepped up beside him, rifle in hand, the one he'd taught her to shoot. Her hands were steady despite her fear. I'm not going anywhere with you. Jed, she said clearly, whatever papers Uncle Silas showed you were lies, and I won't be claimed like livestock. Jed's expression turned ugly. So that's how it is? Mountain Man thinks he can take what's mine. Well, Cole, I guess we settle this the old-fashioned way. Name your terms, Ethan said. Dawn tomorrow, right here. Last man standing takes the girl. She's not a prize to be won, Ethan growled, but I'll meet you to end this. Jed rode away with a mocking salute, leaving ice-cold dread in his wake. That night, Clara May couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to Ethan move around the cabin, checking weapons, preparing. Finally she rose and found him sitting by the dying fire, sharpening his knife with methodical strokes. You can't do this, she whispered. Got no choice. Yes, you do. I'll go with him. I won't let you die for me. Ethan looked up sharply. That's not happening. He'll kill you, Ethan. He's fast, mean. I've heard stories about him. Then I'll have to be faster. He set aside the knife and pulled her down to sit beside him. Listen to me. I would face 100 men like him before I'd let you go back to that life. You hear me? 100. But Jacob needs his father, yes, but he also needs you. We both do. He cupped her face. I'll die before I hurt you, remember? That includes letting someone else hurt you. I can't lose you, she sobbed. I just found you. You're not going to lose me. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. Soft and lingering. A benediction and promise both. Go slow, Clara May. Let me hold you tonight. Just hold you. They lay together on the bed, fully clothed, wrapped in each other's arms. She pressed her face against his chest, memorizing the sound of his heartbeat, the warmth of his skin, the strength in his arms. If something happens tomorrow, nothing will happen, he interrupted. But if it does... And she persisted, I need you to know that you saved me, not just from Uncle Silas or Jed. You saved me from believing I was worthless. You showed me I could be loved, that I could love. Whatever happens, you gave me that gift." His arms tightened around her. "Then you gave me the same gift. You made me believe I could have a second chance at happiness, that there was room in my heart for more than grief." They held each other until dawn, painted the sky pink and gold. The sun rose clear and cold. Jed arrived right on schedule, already wearing his gun belt, confidence in every swagger. A few men from town had somehow gotten word and showed up to witness the confrontation, including, to Clara May's surprise, the circuit judge. "Just making sure this stays legal," the judge said grimly, "though I think this whole situation is barbaric." Ethan and Jed took their positions 30 paces apart. Clara May stood with Jacob clutched against her side, her heart in her throat. "Please," she whispered to no one and everyone, "please let him be safe." "Any last words, Cole?" Jed called. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "No one would ever want a woman like her," they said. "Biggest lie ever told." Jed's face twisted with rage. "Draw!" The gunshots came so close together they sounded like one. Smoke drifted in the still morning air. For a terrible moment, Clara May couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then Jed Hutchins dropped to his knees, clutching his shoulder, his gun fallen in the dirt. Ethan stood tall, smoke curling from his weapon. "It's over," the judge declared. "Cole wins, and for the record I'm declaring any supposed contract null and void on grounds that no woman can be sold or contracted against her will. Miss Hutchins is free to make her own choices." Clara May ran. She flew across the space between them and threw herself into Ethan's arms with such force he stumbled. "You're alive! You're alive!" "Told you," he murmured into her hair. "Told you I wouldn't leave you." "Did you have to shoot his gun hand like that?" she demanded, pulling back to check him for injuries. "You couldn't just, I don't know, shoot to kill." "Wanted him to live?" Ethan said. "Wanted him to go back and tell everyone that Clara May is taken, that she's loved, that anyone who comes for her will answer to me." Jed was hauled away by the men, still cursing, to be treated and then escorted out of the territory permanently. The judge approached them smiling. "Seems to me you two might want to make things official sooner rather than later. I'm authorized to perform marriages if you're interested." Clara May looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Clara May. "Right now?" she asked. "Why wait?" he replied. So there, in the morning light, with snow still patching the ground and a small crowd of witnesses, Clara May Hutchins married Ethan Cole. She wore one of Sarah's dresses that she'd carefully altered. He wore his cleanest shirt and his heart on his sleeve. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with such tenderness that several of the watching men cleared their throats and looked away, blinking. "Together," Ethan whispered against her lips. "Together," she agreed. 5 years later, Clara May stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains. 2 more children played in the yard with Jacob, a boy of 3 and a girl just learning to walk. Inside, another baby grew beneath her heart. Life had been hard but good. They'd faced droughts, harsh winters, the occasional bandit or predator, but they'd faced it all together, just as Ethan had promised. She heard his boots on the wooden planks before she felt his arms encircle her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How impossible this would have seemed once. This life, this happiness." "Nothing impossible about it. You were always meant for happiness, Clara May. Just took finding the right person to help you see it." She turned in his arms, studying the face she loved more with every passing day, weathered, strong, beautiful in its honesty. "They said no one would ever want me," she murmured. "They were fools." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "I'll want you every day for the rest of my life. That's a promise I intend to keep." From inside, Jacob called, "Ma, Pa, supper's ready." They laughed, their children's voices joining in a symphony of home. Hand in hand, they went inside to their family, their life, their hard-won paradise in the mountains. Because sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with a glass slipper or a charming prince, but with someone who sees the truth of you when everyone else is blind. Someone who removes the sack and sees not just a face, but a soul worth loving. And that kind of love, built on respect and tenderness and choosing each other every single day, is the strongest kind of all. The first year of marriage brought challenges Clara May had never anticipated. Not from Ethan. He remained steadfast, patient, loving, but from within herself. Years of abuse had left scars deeper than skin, wounds that didn't heal simply because someone finally treated her with kindness. She woke screaming some nights, trapped in nightmares where Uncle Silas's fists found her again, where she wore the sack forever, where Ethan looked at her with disgust. Each time he held her, whispering reassurances until her breathing slowed. "I'm sorry," she'd say afterward, trembling. "I'm broken." "You're healing," he'd correct. "There's a difference." But it frustrated her, this inability to simply be happy when she had everything she'd ever dreamed of. One morning in late summer, after a particularly bad night, she sat at the table with her head in her hands while Ethan made breakfast. "Maybe Jed was right," she said quietly. "Maybe I'm too damaged for this, for you." The wooden spoon clattered against the pot. Ethan crossed to her in 3 strides, kneeling so their eyes were level. "Don't you ever say that again, you hear me? But I can't even sleep without—" "You survived hell, Clara May. Hell. You think you should just skip along like nothing happened?" His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Healing isn't a straight line. Some days are good, some are hard. But you're not broken and you're not too damaged. You're human, and I love every part of you, even the parts that are still hurting. How can you be so patient? Because you're worth it." He kissed her forehead. "Now come help me with these eggs before I burn them again." The simple normalcy of the request, the absolute acceptance in his eyes, slowly began to teach her that love didn't have to be earned or performed. It could simply be. By autumn, Clara May felt strong enough to venture into town with Ethan. She'd avoided it since the wedding, afraid of whispers and stares. But the general store needed supplies, and she refused to hide forever. The moment they walked down the main street, people noticed. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed them. Clara May's fingers tightened on Ethan's arm. "I've got you," he murmured. "Nobody's going to say a word." But someone did. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Why, Ethan Cole. I heard you'd taken in that poor unfortunate girl. How charitable of you." The words, "poor unfortunate," dripped with condescension. Before Ethan could respond, Clara May stepped forward. "Mrs. Henderson, how kind of you to greet us. Actually, Ethan didn't take me in. He married me. There's a difference between charity and choosing someone because you recognize their worth." Mrs. Henderson's mouth opened and closed, like a landed fish. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Clara May continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "we have shopping to do." She walked past the older woman with her head high, Ethan beside her, his hand warm on her lower back. Once they were out of earshot, he laughed quietly. "That was magnificent." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Couldn't tell." He squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Clara May Cole." Hearing her new name still sent a thrill through her. Inside the general store, Mr. Dawson greeted them warmly. "Mrs. Cole, good to see you. I've got that fabric you ordered, the blue calico, and some peppermint sticks for young Jacob." The easy acceptance from the storekeeper, who'd known Ethan for years, helped Clara May relax. They spent an hour shopping, and several townspeople who approached them did so with genuine kindness. Not everyone saw her as poor unfortunate Clara May anymore. Some saw her as Ethan's wife, Jacob's mother, a woman in her own right. On the ride home, loaded with supplies, Clara May leaned against Ethan's shoulder. "Thank you for bringing me today." Didn't do nothing but sit there while you showed Mrs. Henderson what for. You gave me the courage to speak up. That's something." He kissed the top of her head. "We make a good team, don't we? The best." Winter arrived with vengeance, bringing temperatures so cold that frost formed on the inside of the cabin windows. Clara May learned to navigate the brutal season, banking fires, preserving food, keeping Jacob entertained during the long weeks when snow made going outside dangerous. One particularly fierce storm trapped them inside for 6 days straight. By the 5th day, Jacob was bouncing off the walls with restless energy, and Ethan was reorganizing things that didn't need organizing. "We're going stir-crazy," Clara May observed, watching her husband rearrange the same shelf for the 3rd time. "Little bit," he admitted. She looked at Jacob, and currently trying to build a fort out of firewood. "I have an idea." Pushing the table against the wall, she cleared a space in the center of the cabin. "Ethan, get your fiddle. Jacob, you're going to learn to dance." "Ma, that's silly," Jacob protested, but his eyes sparkled with interest. "Silly's what we need right now." She grabbed Ethan's hand. "Come on, show your son how it's done." Ethan's fiddle had been gathering dust since Sarah died, but his fingers remembered the strings. The first notes were hesitant, then stronger. An old mountain tune filled the cabin, bright and wild. Clara May danced with Jacob first, teaching him basic steps, laughing when he stepped on her toes. Then Ethan set aside the fiddle and swept her into his arms, spinning her around the small space while Jacob clapped and cheered. "I haven't danced in years," Ethan said, slightly breathless. "Me neither. Uncle Silas said dancing was sinful." Uncle Silas was wrong about everything. He dipped her dramatically, making her squeal with surprised laughter. They danced until they were all exhausted and happy, the storm forgotten outside their warm sanctuary. That night, after Jacob fell asleep, Clara May and Ethan lay together in the quiet darkness. His hand traced lazy patterns on her arm. "Clara May," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart jumped. "What is it?" "I'm happy. Happier than I've been since Sarah died. Maybe even happier than before, because I know how precious this is." He paused. "But sometimes I feel guilty about that, like I'm betraying her memory by moving on." Clara May turned to face him, finding his eyes in the dim firelight. "Ethan, loving again isn't betraying her. It's honoring what she would have wanted for you and Jacob, to be happy, to have a full life. I know that in my head, but my heart struggles sometimes." "Then let me help carry that struggle," she said. "We can honor Sarah's memory together. She gave you Jacob, taught you what real love looked like. I'm grateful to her for that. Without her, you wouldn't be the man I fell in love with." His arms tightened around her. "How'd you get so wise? Learned from the best." She kissed him softly. "We're all carrying something, Ethan, but we're carrying it together now. That makes it lighter." "Together," he murmured against her lips, "always together." Spring brought new life in more ways than one. The snow melted, revealing green shoots pushing through wet earth. Birds returned to build nests in the eaves, and Clara May, blushing, told Ethan they would be welcoming a baby come autumn. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then suddenly he lifted her, spinning her around with a whoop of joy that brought Jacob running. "What's happening?" the boy demanded. "You're going to be a big brother," Ethan announced, setting Clara May down carefully as if she might break. Jacob's eyes went wide. "Really? A baby? Can it be a brother? Girls are okay too, I guess, but a brother would be better for playing." Clara May laughed, kneeling to hug him. "We'll love whatever we get, won't we?" "Yeah," Jacob agreed, then looked thoughtful. "Will you still be my ma too, even with a real baby?" The question pierced her heart. "Jacob Cole, I am your real ma." Biology doesn't make a family. Love does. I'll always be your ma, no matter how many babies come along. Understand?" He nodded, but she saw the worry in his eyes, the fear of being displaced, forgotten. Over the following months, she made sure to give Jacob special attention, involving him in preparations for the baby, making him feel important and needed. Ethan watched her navigate motherhood with growing admiration. "You're going to be an incredible mother," he told her one evening as they worked together in the garden. "I already am one," she replied, glancing toward where Jacob was supposedly weeding, but was actually playing with a beetle. "That boy taught me more about love than I ever knew. He's lucky to have you. We both are." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Clara May battled nausea for months, then swollen ankles, then exhaustion that made climbing out of bed feel like scaling a mountain. But Ethan was there for every moment, rubbing her feet, holding her hair when she was sick, taking over her chores without complaint. "I should be doing more," she fretted one afternoon, watching him hang laundry while she rested. "You're growing a human being," he replied. "That's plenty." When her belly grew large enough that simple tasks became difficult, he helped her dress, never once making her feel helpless or burdensome. When she cried over nothing, hormones wreaking havoc, he held her and assured her she wasn't going crazy. "You're amazing," he'd say. "Look what your body is doing. It's a miracle." The baby came in early October, during a night when the stars shone cold and bright. The midwife from town had come to stay a few days before. Sensing the time was near, labor was hard, longer and more painful than Clara May had imagined. She gripped Ethan's hand, crushing his fingers during contractions. "Go slow," she gasped at one point. "It hurts. God, it hurts." "I know, love. I know, but you can do this. You're the strongest person I know." "I can't. You can, and I'm right here, not going anywhere." 17 hours after the first contraction, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry. Ethan cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as the midwife placed the baby on Clara May's chest. "She's perfect," Clara May sobbed, exhausted and exhilarated. "She's absolutely perfect." The baby had Ethan's dark hair and Clara May's delicate features. Her tiny fist wrapped around Clara May's finger, holding tight. "What should we name her?" Ethan asked, stroking the baby's head with one finger. Clara May looked at her new daughter, then at her husband, then toward the door where Jacob waited anxiously. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." Because that's what this child represented. Hope for the future. Hope that good things could come from hard beginnings. Hope that love could heal even the deepest wounds. The years that followed were full and rich, textured with both joy and challenge. Hope grew into a spirited toddler with her father's stubbornness and her mother's gentle heart. 2 years later, another son arrived, Samuel, quiet and thoughtful where Hope was loud and adventurous. Clara May learned to manage a bustling household, but more importantly, she learned to manage her own healing. The nightmares came less frequently. The moments of crushing self-doubt grew fewer. She couldn't pinpoint exactly when she stopped flinching at sudden movements or when she began to truly believe she deserved happiness. It happened gradually, like snow melting, slow but inevitable. One summer afternoon, she stood in her garden, a plot that had grown from a few vegetables to a thriving space full of flowers, herbs, and produce. Her hands were dirty, her dress simple, her hair coming loose from its braid. She was wiping sweat from her forehead when a shadow fell across her. Looking up, she saw a well-dressed woman on a fine horse. It took a moment to place her, one of Uncle Silas's old friends, Mrs. Pemberton, who'd attended that awful day at the trading post. "My goodness," Mrs. Pemberton said, dismounting. "Clara May, is that really you?" Clara May stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "Mrs. Pemberton, what brings you this way?" I'm visiting family nearby and heard the coal place was along this route. I wanted to see... She trailed off, looking around at the well-maintained cabin, the thriving garden, the children's laughter drifting from behind the barn. Everyone said Silas had lied about you, that you weren't. Well, that you were actually quite lovely. I had to see for myself. The old Clara May would have shrunk from such scrutiny. The new Clara May simply smiled. Would you like some lemonade? It's a hot day. Over cool drinks on the porch, Mrs. Pemberton kept staring. I don't understand. You seem so content, happy even, after everything. I am happy, Clara May confirmed. But how? Your uncle always said you were simple-minded, unmarriageable. He kept you hidden. He lied. Clara May's voice was gentle but firm. He lied about everything. I'm not simple. I'm not ugly. I'm not worthless. I never was. He just needed me to believe I was so I'd never question my treatment. Mrs. Pemberton looked genuinely distressed. We all believed him. We should have questioned. Yes, you should have. Clara May didn't soften the truth, but I've learned that holding on to anger only poisons the person carrying it. I've chosen to let go, not for my uncle's sake or yours, but for mine. You're remarkable, Mrs. Pemberton said quietly. I think we all owe you an apology. I think you all owe it to yourselves to look harder at people you're told to dismiss, Clara May replied. But I appreciate your words. After Mrs. Pemberton left, Ethan emerged from the barn where he'd been working. Everything all right? More than all right. Clara May leaned into his embrace. I just realized something. I'm not the girl who arrived here in a sack anymore. I'm not even sure when she disappeared, but she's gone. Who are you now? He asked, kissing her temple. I'm Clara May Cole, wife, mother, gardener, friend. I'm someone who survived and chose to thrive. I'm someone who loves and is loved in return. She looked up at him. I'm enough, just as I am. His eyes shone with pride and love. You always were. I'm just glad you finally see it. That night, as she tucked Hope and Samuel into bed, Jacob, now 11 and shooting up like a weed, lingered in the doorway. Ma, can I ask you something? Always, sweetheart. He shuffled his feet. Do you ever think about your life before? Before you came here? She considered the question carefully. Sometimes, usually when I need to remember how far I've come. Does it still hurt? Remembering? Sometimes, she admitted, but less than it used to. And you know what I've learned? Even the painful parts of our past help make us who we are. I wouldn't be the mother I am to you and your siblings if I hadn't known what it felt like to be unloved. It taught me how precious love really is. Jacob nodded slowly. I'm glad you're our Ma. You're the best one anyone could have. After the children were asleep, Clara May stood by the window, looking out at the mountains silhouetted against the starlit sky. Ethan's arms came around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm grateful for all of it, even the hard parts that led me here, because this... She gestured to the cabin, the sleeping children, the life they'd built. This was worth every moment of pain. No one would ever want a woman like her, Ethan quoted softly. Remember when your uncle said that? Every day, Clara May replied, and every day I prove him wrong. Their 5th year of marriage brought unexpected challenges when a harsh winter was followed by a dry spring. Crops struggled, animals grew thin, neighboring ranches began to fail, families packing up and moving east in search of better opportunities. One evening, Ethan sat at the table with their account books, his expression grim. Clara May, nursing baby Samuel while keeping an eye on Hope and Jacob, felt worry curl in her stomach. How bad is it? She asked quietly. Bad enough. He rubbed his face. We'll make it through, but it'll be tight. Might have to sell some of the herd. Cut back on everything but essentials. Clara May's mind raced. What about my garden? I could expand it, sell vegetables in town. And I've been thinking about taking in sewing. Mrs. Dawson mentioned she needs help with wedding dresses. Clara May, you've got 3 children to care for. You can't... We're partners, remember? Together. She shifted Samuel to her other breast. I can manage the garden with Jacob's help, and I can sew while the babies nap. We'll figure this out. His expression softened. What did I do to deserve you? Removed a sack and saw what was underneath, she replied with a small smile. They worked harder than ever that year. Ethan took odd jobs at neighboring ranches. Clara May's garden flourished, despite the drought, thanks to careful water management, and her sewing skills, learned during long winters, proved profitable. Jacob, mature beyond his years, stepped up to help with both the children and the ranch work. One afternoon, Clara May was working in the garden while Hope and Samuel played nearby when she heard horses approaching. Looking up, she saw 5 rough-looking men she didn't recognize. Her heart started pounding. "Ethan's not here," she called out, standing slowly. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The leader, a scarred man with mean eyes, looked around the property assessingly. "Heard Cole's having money troubles. We're here to make an offer on the place." "The ranch isn't for sale." "Everything's for sale at the right price, darling." His smile made her skin crawl. "We could make life real easy for you, or real hard. Your choice." Clara May was acutely aware of her children behind her, of the rifle leaning against the cabin wall, too far to reach. "I think you should leave now. I think we'll stay and wait for your husband, have a discussion man to man." "Ma?" Jacob appeared from the barn, carrying a pitchfork. At 11, he was tall but still a child. "These men bothering you?" "Go back to the barn, Jacob," Clara May said firmly. "Listen to your ma, boy." The scarred man laughed. What happened next occurred in a blur. Hope, sensing the tension, started to cry. One of the men moved toward her, perhaps to quiet her, perhaps with other intent. Clara May didn't wait to find out. Years of Ethan's shooting lessons kicked in. She grabbed the rifle, chambered a round, and had it pointed at the man's chest before he'd taken 3 steps. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't even think about it." The man froze. His companions' hands moved toward their own weapons. "I wouldn't," Clara May continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My husband taught me to shoot, and I don't miss. Not at this distance. Jacob, get your siblings inside." "But Ma, now!" Jacob scooped up Samuel and herded Hope toward the cabin. "You're making a mistake, lady," the leader growled. "The mistake would be staying here another minute," Clara May replied. "This is my home, my family, and I will protect both. Now get off my land before my husband gets back. He's significantly less patient than I am." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the leader spat in the dirt. "This ain't over." "Yes, it is." Clara May's finger stayed near the trigger until they mounted up and rode away. Only when they disappeared over the ridge did she lower the rifle, her hands starting to shake. Jacob rushed out. "Ma, you were amazing. You stood up to them like a gunfighter or something." Clara May sat down hard on the porch steps, adrenaline draining away. "I was terrified." "Couldn't tell," Jacob said, echoing his father's words from years ago. When Ethan returned and heard what happened, he went pale. "They could have killed you." "They could have hurt our children," Clara May replied. "I couldn't let that happen." He pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You're incredible. Terrifying, but incredible. Together, remember, I protect this family just as much as you do." Word of the confrontation spread through the valley. A few days later, Sheriff Barnes rode out from town. "Heard you had some trouble, Mrs. Cole." Clara May recounted the incident, while Ethan stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. The sheriff nodded grimly. "That'd be Rake Morrison's gang. They've been sniffing around struggling ranches, trying to buy land cheap. Usually people are too scared to refuse." "Well, I refused," Clara May said. "So I heard. Also heard you did it with more backbone than most men would show." He tipped his hat. "I'll make sure Morrison knows this ranch is under official protection. He won't bother you again." After the sheriff left, Ethan looked at Clara May with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "Remember when you first came here, so scared you couldn't look me in the eye?" "I remember. Look at you now, standing up to outlaws, protecting our home, running a business on the side." He cupped her face. "You're the strongest person I know." "I learned from the best," she said, rising on her toes to kiss him. "You showed me I was worth protecting, so now I protect what's worth keeping." That night, lying in bed with Ethan's arms around her, Clara May thought about the girl in the sack, that frightened, broken girl who'd believed she deserved nothing. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, really seeing me. Not what I was told I was, but what I actually am." "That works both ways," Ethan murmured. "You saw past the grieving widower to the man who still had love to give. We saved each other, Clara May. Together," she said, "always together." By their 10th anniversary, the ranch had not only survived, but thrived. The drought years were behind them, and careful management had left them in a strong position. Jacob, now 16, was as capable as any man. Hope, at 8, could ride like the wind and had opinions on everything. Samuel, at 6, spent hours helping his mother in her ever-expanding garden, and 2 more additions had joined the family, twin boys, Matthew and Luke, who at 3 years old were a whirlwind of energy and mischief. Clara May sometimes looked at her brood and wondered how this had become her life. 5 children, a thriving home. A husband who still looked at her like she hung the moon. It seemed impossible that this was the same woman who'd once stood in a trading post wearing a sack, believing she was worthless. One afternoon, while she was teaching Hope how to make bread and simultaneously keeping the twins from eating raw dough, a fancy carriage pulled up to their cabin. Clara May wiped flour from her hands, curious about such an unusual visitor. A well-dressed woman emerged, middle-aged, elegant, with kind eyes. "Mrs. Cole? Clara May Cole?" "Yes, can I help you?" "My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm a representative from the Women's Educational Fund in Boston. We're documenting stories of remarkable women in the West, and your name came up repeatedly in our inquiries." Clara May blinked. "I think you have the wrong person. I'm not remarkable." Mrs. Whitmore smiled. "From what I've heard, you'd be the only one who thinks so. May I come in? I'd love to talk with you." Over tea, Mrs. Whitmore explained that she'd heard Clara May's story from multiple sources, how she'd overcome abuse, built a successful life, stood up to outlaws, and become a pillar of the small but growing community. "We'd like to include your story in our publication," Mrs. Whitmore said, "to inspire other women who might be in situations like yours was." Clara May felt overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say. I just lived my life, did what I had to do." "That's exactly what makes it remarkable," Mrs. Whitmore replied. "Most women in your situation would have given up. Instead, you fought, you grew, you thrived. That matters." After Mrs. Whitmore left with promises to send the publication once complete, Clara May sat on the porch, processing. Ethan found her there, staring at the mountains. "Everything all right?" She told him about the visit, about the publication. "It's strange, thinking of my story being something that could help others." "Why strange? You helped yourself. Makes sense you could help others too." "But I had you. I had help. What about the women who don't?" Ethan sat beside her, taking her hand. "That's why your story matters. You show them what's possible. You show them that they're not defined by what was done to them, but by who they choose to become. Clara May leaned her head on his shoulder. When did you get so wise? Learned from the best. He echoed her words from years ago. That winter, a young woman appeared at their door, barely 20, with a black eye and terror in her face. Please, she whispered, they said you might help, that you'd understand. Clara May took one look at her and saw herself a decade earlier. Come inside, you're safe here. The woman, Rose, stayed for 3 weeks. Clara May tended her wounds, listened to her story, and slowly helped her rebuild her confidence. Ethan treated Rose with the same respect he'd shown Clara May, proving that his kindness hadn't been an exception, but rather who he truly was. When Rose was ready to leave, Clara May gave her money saved from her sewing business and the name of a family in California who might help. This isn't charity, she said firmly. This is one woman helping another. Someday, you'll do the same for someone else. Rose hugged her tightly. They said no one would ever want a woman like me, that I was broken. Clara May's breath caught. I know those words. I've heard them too. And I'm here to tell you they're lies. You are wanted, you are worthy, and you are not broken. You're breaking free. After Rose left, Ethan found Clara May in their bedroom, crying quietly. What's wrong? He asked, concerned. Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. She wiped her eyes. I just realized, helping her, seeing her find her strength, this is why I went through what I did, so I could be here for her, so I could show her it gets better. You turned your pain into purpose, Ethan said. That's a rare gift. Over the following years, other women came. Word spread through underground networks that Clara May Cole would help, no questions asked. Some stayed for days, others for months. She gave them shelter, guidance, and most importantly, belief in themselves. The ranch became known as a place of second chances, of hope, of transformation. And Clara May, who'd once believed she had nothing to offer the world, discovered she had the most valuable gift of all, understanding born from experience. On their 15th anniversary, Ethan surprised her with a new sign for the ranch entrance. It read, Cole Ranch, where every ending is a new beginning. It's perfect, Clara May said, tears in her eyes. You're perfect, Ethan replied, pulling her close. 15 years ago, I removed a sack and found the most beautiful soul I'd ever encountered. Every day since has been a gift. No one would ever want a woman like her, Clara May quoted, then smiled. Best lie ever told, because it brought me to you. Their children, all 5 now grown or growing, gathered around them. Jacob, nearly a man at 21, raised a glass. To Ma and Pa, the strongest people we know, together, together, they all echoed. Clara May looked around at her family, this impossible, beautiful family, and felt complete. The girl in the sack was gone, transformed into a woman who knew her worth, who loved and was loved, who took her pain and turned it into power to help others. She'd been told no one would want her. Instead, she'd found a man who wanted her, children who needed her, and a purpose that fulfilled her. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about being rescued. They're about finding someone who helps you rescue yourself, and that's the most beautiful transformation of all. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara May and Ethan's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.